Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, I'm a programmer at TIFF now, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is William Kaufman, a writer and director whose films include The Hit List, Daylight's End, and Bad Cop, as well as the action sequels Jarhead 3 and The Marine 4. His latest is The Channel, starring Clayne Crawford and Max Martini as brothers who pull an extremely ambitious heist and then have to get themselves, their loot, and their crew out of New Orleans alive. It's just landed on digital and on demand across North America, and you should check it out. William picked Michael Mann's Collateral, the 2004 thriller starring Jamie Foxx as Max, a Los Angeles cabbie who makes the mistake of picking up an assassin named Vincent, played by Tom Cruise, and spends a hellish night driving around as Vincent goes around killing people, with Max as both chauffeur and hostage. It's Mann at his most stripped down, and the result is a claustrophobic, intimate cat and mouse picture where every element feels urgent and nervy. Also, how often does Tom Cruise play the bad guy? This is Someone Else's Movie.
You know, I was a fan of Michael Mann's forever. That's what drew me to the film. I've been a fan of Mann since, I'd say, probably Thief. Mm-hmm. And I just loved his sense of style. And as I was growing up as a young filmmaker, and I was that little nerd running around with a video camera. And so growing up as a filmmaker, my taste kind of evolved. And Michael Mann was one of the early guys that I saw that kind of said I could do things with action, but do it with drama. And so that's what took me on the Michael Mann path. And then, eventually, like everyone I love, or everyone who should, I love Heat, right? And then I came across, I heard about Collateral. I was killer excited. It was cool to see him doing something that he would call short format, 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I went in and watched the film, and I just love the fact that I had no idea what was going to happen, who would make it. And they truly, all bets were off.
Yeah, I remember seeing it at a preview screening, like a Monday night or a Wednesday night, and I guess we can talk about spoilers. The film's almost 20 years old. When Mark Ruffalo just gets plucked right out of the film, there were gasps because Mann has that innate ability to cast exactly the right person to kill. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yes. It's that guy that has heart, right?
Yeah, and I love that guy. I'm so glad he's in. Oh, yeah. And the one time he doesn't do it is in Heat, where Kilmer just seems to have a target on his back for the entire picture, and the tragedy of it is that he survives, but he survives alone.
Right. Yeah, I mean the final scene of him looking up at Ashley Judd, yeah, was just a little heartbreaking. So that's I agree. He is the guy you knew wouldn't make it, and I think that was about this film is, Jamie Foxx's performance is so endearing, and Tom Cruise is doing something and looking in a way that we've never seen him look, and it was kind of like reading this really cool dark film noir novel, some really cool Pulp Fiction, it's brilliantly written by Stuart Batty, and I think I heard Mann talk about his plan on it was he loved shooting at night. He loved the idea that the night sky was his was kind of a smothering compression. It was a ceiling that was keeping people down, and then now you're in the middle of this city that if you don't know it having lived there, you know it after watching millions of movies. Mm-hmm. And it was just such a this awesome maze of damage, right? And these fantastically developed, interesting characters.
It is such a strange challenge too for Michael Mann. The sky, the look of it, the digital feel of it. I mean, this was his sort of tipping point for Mann into full digital, to the point where the opening scene, I think, is shot on celluloid, right? And then they switch to digital as soon as they get out of the airport. And you're stuck in there. You're stuck in this noisy, messy HD. The camera was a Viper, I think, and it was the first time someone had shot a feature with it. And I have to say, I have never, ever been a fan of Mann's obsession with digital. I think his thing with getting really, really close with a tiny camera to an actor's face is really interesting. But in film after film since then, he's gotten grainier and messier, and the tech isn't always up to where he wants it to be. Like Public Enemies looks flattened out, and
Well,
you can't shoot a period film with a digital camera the way he did, because
100%.
it makes everybody look like they're running around like they're kids playing dress up in a backyard.
That's I said that when I saw it, and there I am going in to love it, and I wasn't bothered by the Viper on Collateral. I mean, you think about this big camera that had a tethered hard drive that these
Mm-hmm.
guys were operating, and it was the newest tech. I still love the way Collateral works, but I had that issue with Miami Vice, and a lot of Miami Vice looks cool, but then he really pushed the envelope on the light and the ability of capturing all the grain. And then watching Public Enemy, and you're just going, well, you nailed it. It's like everyone's in dress up, especially after watching films like Road to Perdition, right?
Yeah,
So
it's not necessarily Mann's fault. Like, it's partially because the gloss in so many, like prestige movies about those eras have led us to believe that we think we know what it looks like The
right,
Untouchables, right, where everything is just
right.
burnished gold and bronze and brass, and wood. And maybe Public Enemies. I mean, I'm sure that he's meticulous about set deck and costuming. I'm sure it's
Yes.
supposed to be accurate, but it just didn't play. Collateral is the one that I was going to say I was dreading the 4K release that came out a couple of years ago, because I was convinced it would make it look terrible. But of course, they went back to the film prints,
Right.
and that kind of works. It does have, especially in retrospect with what he's done since, it has a really distinctive look that feels right. Everybody feels a little sweaty. They're all wearing long, like long sleeves and suits, but they look like they want to take them off. And
Yeah.
the grain sort of works with skin tone and with perspiration. It's the one film of his where the experiment worked for me.
Well, and what's strange is that films are getting better off, films are also getting better of post grain,
Mm-hmm.
help it look more filmic.
Yeah.
And which is I don't think the guys, my age and young and older, we don't understand that our kids grew up on digital, and they don't see what we see.
Right.
They're oblivious to it. If anything, I think that the older films that were shot on film. I took my daughter to a double feature of Blade Runner. She's like 20 years old. Double feature of Blade Runner, and then the new Blade Runner. Right.
Okay. Oh wow.
And
Yeah.
and
It's night and day.
yeah, and she liked the new one better, and we didn't talk all the way home.
I I wonder, yeah, when you think about, and Mann was certainly part of the bee smoke and the and shadows thing in the 80s. Like, the Keep is almost all smoke.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And of course, no one talks about the Keep, but I'm fascinated by that film, and will be until the day I die. He has gone away from that into this weird naturalistic thing that still wants to be stylized. I mean, look at the vistas in Heat, and the way the water and the sky like kiss each other in that horizon
Oh
line.
yeah.
On film, it's gorgeous, and then he tries to restage it later, and it's sort of there, but even Black Hat has a couple of shots that try to evoke Heat, but digitally, and I don't know that they succeeded. But yeah, what he's doing in Collateral is finding the bridge. Like, he's marrying the disciplines in a way that I think is the only time it's worked for him. And also, just the fact that he convinced Tom Cruise to put silver in his hair, that
Well, to
sells
put
it
a
more
wig
than
on,
anything else. Yeah, but just
right?
like to look different, to look
Yeah,
older,
yeah, yeah.
it's the other piece of the puzzle, because that aesthetic and his gray suit and white shirt and just the look he has for the film, it feels like some other sort of weird fusion is going on. And part of that is just like the last time Tom Cruise is willing to be a villain,
Right.
um, which is something he's always been good at, pushing himself to be unlikable, but he's so terrified that people will not like him.
Right.
They'll see it as a performance, that he never does it. But this is, I wouldn't say it's the best role he's ever had, but he is so good. And it feels like, I said this about Magnolia a while back, that it was the last time
Yes.
he
It's
listened
gonna
to a
hit my head.
director, but
Yeah.
but maybe it was Collateral. Maybe that was the last time he let someone push him out of his comfort zone.
Well, and I think and I think that Michael Mann and Tom Cruise's personalities
Mhm.
as artistically ambitious and driven as those two guys are. I mean, Michael Mann's not a pushover. Neither one of them are. So I imagine they had some challenging moments on it where Jamie Foxx on the side trying to crack jokes. But um, I think you're right. I was just about to say that the only other time I can really, I mean, like in Magnolia, he plays a pretty dislikable character, but he does such a good job of showing heart as well. That's another amazing performance. I just, I would say Collateral is my favorite.
I'm never sure. There's so much good work to choose from, right? Which is never a bad thing. And
Right.
and then you think about the original pitch, which was that De Niro would be the taxi driver because they wanted to flip
Oh wow.
yeah, they wanted to flip the Travis Bickle thing.
I never
Um,
knew that. I
yeah,
never knew.
well, there were a bunch of people who were briefly cast. Mann came on because Russell Crowe was going to play Vincent for a
Okay,
while, and he brought him
that
on
makes
after, yeah, because of the Insider, and it was supposed to be Russell Crowe. I cannot imagine this would have ever worked, but it was supposed to be Russell Crowe and Adam Sandler.
Oh wow. I'd heard for like a minute um Cuba Gooding
Yeah,
was
yeah,
up for Jamie Foxx's role.
he's on that
And
list too.
I think that they decided that it was too much of a Jerry Maguire reunion that they changed their minds on it. But interesting
Yeah,
stuff.
that would have been you could kind of see.
I can.
I would have watched that. It would have worked.
Yeah.
Especially because you'd have the psychological thing in the background. Well, why are they fighting? They like each other.
You're right, right.
That push and pull. But then there's casting against type, and then I can also see Mann being such a perfectionist that he'd think it would just take people out of the movie from the first minute.
Well, I think it's also cool that like Jamie Foxx coming in and taking that role on. I mean, Jamie's very much an alpha male guy himself.
Mm-hmm.
Plays such an indecisive to the outside world kind of weak, which he's actually very much an everyman, people talking about what they're going to do, they're never going to do type thing.
Yeah.
And I thought that in itself was like a kind of a hidden message of Michael Mann saying, you know, you can say you want to be a filmmaker, then go make movies. It's like actually live your dreams. So that
Yeah.
I love that scene you kind of referred to, which is between Vincent and Max, and they're both doing a really good job of fencing and sticking each other back and forth about, why do you do what you do? Why do you do what you do? You know, and you
Yeah.
got Vincent over here who's this just machine shark in the water, like some masterless Ronin, going around, and he just watching him, and it's almost as if he's so incredibly curious about the character of Max. Like he's looking at him like, this is what like a regular person is.
Yeah. A civilian.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I kept trying to figure out the first time I saw it, is he trying to figure out a way to spare him? Is he trying to find a way to justify not killing him? Because I mean, that's obviously where the twist of having it be Jada Pinkett Smith's character that he's trying to stalk is great, but it's pretty much a given the minute this guy gets into the car that Max is dead.
Yes.
That is his plan. And then
and his MO, right? That's what we
yeah,
hear in the
it's what he
movie.
does all the time.
Yeah.
But on second viewing, I was watching Cruise, and it's just like I think he's trying to get a psychological profile. I think he's trying to find out if this guy is going to put up a fight, and everything he does is designed to provoke, and everything that Max does is just to deflect.
Right.
And they do finally get agitated with each other about halfway through, especially once Max starts panicking and understands what's going on. But he's still like his instinct is to get out of the way, which also kind of explains why he hasn't achieved anything he wants to. Because
Right.
obviously, in any tight situation, this guy's just going to try to make peace and fold. And so
Yeah.
the film becomes Max's journey to, it sounds so dumb, but like self-actualization, which makes Vincent his life coach.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And what you said is super smart that I hadn't looked at it that way. And I know now you're right, is the idea that he is analyzing the risk potential of this. It's not that he has a
Yeah.
problem killing someone. There's some quote about, if everything's going to be forgotten in 50 years, how relevant is it? Why shouldn't I kill someone if they're in my way?
Mm.
And yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it just keeps coming up with new and not new interpretations, but it's it keeps revealing new pieces about these two people every time I look at it again. And I probably hadn't watched it in 10 years when the Blu-ray came, or when the 4K came out, and I got the chance to really revisit it. And it's just like, this was really good. It's weirdly forgotten, I think, because Miami Vice has been reclaimed by the film dudes, or the Dudes Rock Cinema, or whatever that contingent is.
Yep.
And maybe that's the one he really had his heart in, because Mann didn't develop this project himself, and it came onto it after other people had passed and all of that. But I think, like, Michael Mann being a journeyman and jumping in and doing the best possible job with something is a secret strength of his that no one gives him any credit for.
Yeah, and I think that you can watch movies like Thief and Manhunter and again going into Collateral. Yeah. They're very different kind of movies than the big epics like Mohicans, right?
Yeah.
So I think that he just excelled at telling a small story with huge stakes and just such a tight, well-paced script,
Hey, it's Norm, interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. This week, I'll be writing about Criterion's exquisite new set of the Bud Boddicker, Randolph Scott renowned westerns, and the essential restoration of Cheryl Dunier's The Watermelon Woman. And speaking of Tom Cruise, I'm still working on that epic look at the Mission Impossible movies. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io, or find a link at the Semcast Twitter account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. And it does come back to his core strength, which is the thing he does best, I think, is tell stories about people who are the best at what they do, and then just show us how that is, rather than have other people say, this guy, with the exception of Heat, where both sides of the story have to be kind of grounded in excellence, and people are over and over saying that guy's the best and he's fantastic and you'll never beat him, just so we get the sense of the tension when they finally come together. But he really does, just like, even with Ali, get out of the way of the characters and show us, frame it properly. We see the passion, we see the drive, we see the fury. And then here you just watch Tom Cruise as a ticking time bomb. And it's the I'm silently judging you moment in Magnolia, where there is nothing more terrifying than Tom Cruise waiting to do something. It's just really unnerving. He's got some bizarre quality, like a predator just coiled on a tree branch waiting to jump.
Which makes sense that you said Russell Crowe would have been up for it, because I think of Bud White in LA Confidential gripping that chair.
Yeah.
The point, like, oh God, what's he going to do? So
it's a really good point.
Sure.
Good call. And it makes Jamie Foxx dynamic simply because we are identifying with him. We are sympathizing with Max from the get-go, and watching this poor struggling, just this guy. Like, he has nothing but his head. Like, he has nothing but his mind. His car is useless. He can't do anything. It's identified, and every time he leaves the car, something terrible happens and he's punished. It's his only safe space, but it's also the thing that ties him to all these murders. It's just like, to be boxed into that space with Jamie Foxx and occupy it. Did you see Locke, the one with Tom Hardy driving a car from, I think, Brighton to London or Birmingham to London in an hour and a half in real time? It's just him in a car, taking calls, and it's really good. It's really smart, and again, it understands that you can use the framing device of the vehicle as like a tiny landscape, like a stage for the character. And
what was the Grillo film that came out? Was it Wheelman or something?
Oh yeah, I think it is Wheelman or Drive Away.
Where the whole thing is in that car, and that was that's a really,
it's a big swing. It's a big swing.
It is.
Oh yeah. Speaking of casting, I don't want to miss out on the fact that the film is a stealth transporter picture, because everyone decided that Jason Statham is playing Frank Martin in this. Like, he just shows up, hands a case, and walks away. That's exactly what that character would do.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's either
Yeah.
that or now he's the guy from his Fast and Furious movies. So he's
No,
Shaw.
I
So
definitely think he's transporter.
he's a
I definitely
transporter.
think he's transporter.
Okay. Because, there's going to be a Reddit thread about this someday. We have to be ready.
um, one thing I've always loved about him, which I thought when I first heard it in the original Miami Vice series, was his use of music,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how he's done a really good job of, I mean, his scores are like a character and add so much and tell so much story within the scenes. And I mean, even the what was the Black Hole Sun, the Chris Cornell song that plays during the montage with the
Oh, yeah,
coyote in
yeah.
it. Um, uh, that came out of nowhere, and I loved it. And I know some people that's not their thing, but I really responded to that.
Oh, yeah. No, he had me with Inagata Devita in Manhunter, where it just becomes
Yeah,
the most oppressive, anxiety-inducing thing you've ever heard.
yeah,
It's the rare filmmaker who can color a song for me after I see their movie. But that was one where it's just like every time I hear that, I'm like, oh, why am I nervous? Oh, right. There's a bad man somewhere.
yes,
And here and his thing too with the occasional love of temp track music. There's a track in here from Ridley Scott's 1492 by Vangelis, which surprises me every time I hear it. It's like, I recognize that. This doesn't belong here, but it kind of plays.
yeah. I
And
mean, he's also a big Moby fan, right?
mhm. And this was right at that time, or Moby had already by that point had proven that he could. Well, that was the thing, right? Like he licensed every track from his album and made that a big deal. It was some kind of first that every track from is it the 13 album? I can't remember which one it was, but every track from that
I don't.
album appears in something. And I remember getting a press release and thinking, I guess that's something to be proud of, but it feels, I don't know, it feels weird and way too commercial. But then again, we all know what Moby sounds like, so I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to make sure we cover all the pieces too. Did we leave anything out? This is the problem with just,
I know something.
yeah, sure.
Okay, I would say uh, the other thing that I think that Michael Mann, this movie really shows off is the way violence is portrayed, and it is very gritty, in your face. It's like you're watching um, real shootouts happening. The sequence, his murder of the punks that try to rob him. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
that looks like I looked down the wrong alley just as a mugging was happening. So I mean, that's a thing that he does with the handheld use of camera that I find that I respond so well to, and have definitely influenced how I look at shooting action. And he's great at doing like a Club Fever, the shootout in the nightclub.
Yeah,
He,
that's great because it's chaotic, but you can still tell where everything is. There's coherence, and it's so different from. I was thinking of the obviously the set piece in Heat with the bank robbery goes wrong, and you are just following ordnance wherever it goes. And it's
right.
meticulous and formal. And this is messy and scary, and you can't really tell what's going on. The second Ruffalo gets hit, the whole thing explodes into people racing in front of the camera. And and again, I get that's his thing with the digital cameras. He wants to be right in the middle of the melee and show you what it feels like to be at eye level with chaos.
Right.
And here is the time that it works. Like this is the movie where he absolutely captures the thing he's the thing he's chasing, his forever goal.
And I think what helps in his action and helps in Collaterals, like you said, as chaotic as it was, he does a great job of showing geography. So with his over the shoulder shots, you really get a sense of that Tom is over there, Jamie's over here, and the
Mm-hmm.
Koreans are that. So I think just otherwise it's just a bunch of quick cuts and it's a mess and you don't know what's happening at all, and it's not very engaging. And I think once you have it can be crazy, but having a sense of what things are happening rather than 25 close-ups cut together of people shooting.
Yeah. he is meticulous with his camera placement, even when it looks like it doesn't mean anything in Collateral. We're always
Right.
in exactly the right place. I mean, just to have a body land on a car, that sort of thing. But he's prepping all the time, and it's that thing again, the thing he did in Manhunter, the thing he does in Thief, in Heat, the sense of simmering activity where something is always about to happen, and the only person who isn't ready is the audience, like or the audience surrogate, and Max in this case. But even then, towards the second half of the film, he starts to armor up. He starts to try to be in a headspace where he can respond immediately. And you get a sense of it too in his flirting early on, where it's like this guy can turn himself up. Like
Yeah.
he can elevate his game and be, he's not like he's flirting with her, but he's also genuinely listening to her, and he's not just passing time. Like there's a connection, and he's enjoying himself. And so
Yeah.
he wakes up, right? Like he rouses himself to it.
And like you're saying, that there's a lot of sincerity in it. It's not just that he's hitting on her. He's actually, there's a spark there that he's made a connection.
Yeah.
And she curiously the same.
Yeah,
You
you
know?
feel like there's a playfulness in that too. And I just thought, even at the very beginning, it's like, oh, if we never see her again, this is a perfect short film. This is a great little
Yeah.
scene. And then
Yes.
we sort of get this window into what his life could be like. And then Vincent shows up and just derails it completely. And then, of course, the beauty of the script is that at the end, all three characters are back together, and then the stakes are as high as they could possibly be.
Right. Right.
He's so good at that. He's just so good at it.
Hence why I'm such a crazy fan.
No kidding.
Absolutely.
Well, this does segue into the other question fairly easily, which is the other question I always ask on the podcast, which is what, if anything, you've borrowed yourself from Collateral. I mean, you've already mentioned that it was sort of a catalyzing influence, Mann cinema in general, but is there something of Collateral that you have specifically lifted or stolen or run away with, or just full on built a movie around? A shot, a moment, an attitude?
I will say the sense of tone.
Mm-hmm.
The film I just made, The Channel, is a one night run escape, two criminals, and they're two brothers and one of their girls, and they are, and I mean his girlfriend. And so there's this. You've got Clayne Crawford is in the middle, and Max Martini is his older brother. And there's this push and pull that very much is borrowed from this film, and just the sense of Mann in general. And I think that that compression of time, and pacing was really interesting to play with. And the action has always been something that I look towards, and part of that is just being, I have a lot of really talented, smart, dangerous friends. These my attack advisors who are Navy SEALs, or I have a buddy who's a Russian Spetsnaz commando. And as a writer, I'm always digging up all these bits and pieces, and I think, having them work on my films in as much of a way as my films can handle, budgetarily, what Michael Mann does with his. I mean, Tom definitely went through, you know, a very good gun school, to look as technically proficient as possible. And beyond just the gun nerd side of it, I think it's just, it creates such a hyper realism to it. Like, you really, it's another layer that adds for the character. And I think I definitely have tried to keep seeing the value in that, and selling that to my producers to be involved in the work I do. And I love that idea of and finally on Collateral is leaning on this compressed in a city, trying to get out, the night bearing down on them, and daylight means the end. You know?
Yeah. I mean, anytime you have people running around with very large, assault weapons, you're going to, especially with goalie masks and things, right? You're going to think
Right.
about heat here and there. And to the point where I no longer can tell if filmmakers are referencing heat that way, or if they're referencing reality because people are doing that because they saw heat and it just bleeds back into art, right? Like that's Michael Mann. Like, he is so good at defining a thing that it becomes part of the culture.
And referencing back to how heat has influenced this, I've just done a bank robber movie. My movie was about the heist happens at the beginning. It's not what the story's about. The story's about escaping.
Mhm.
But someone asked me, "Oh, are you big fans of Den of Thieves or The Town or whatever?" And I was like, no, maybe this little movie from '92 called Heat. Yes, obviously, there's winking at that movie all day long. I definitely, have mad crazy respect for that film. But all these other films, they're great films. I love The Town. I mean, all of them. I say, and myself included, we wouldn't have the scripts we have. We wouldn't have made the movies we had without Heat, and without the North Hollywood Shootout. I don't think Heat would have existed.
Yeah. Yeah,
So I
that's
mean,
true.
my reference materials to my prop masters and wardrobe were not any of the movies we've mentioned. They were to the museum of the North Hollywood Shootout. So the ballistic masks and all that stuff, that's where that came from. So they may look like hockey masks, but they're actually ballistic masks.
Yeah,
So
this is my
that's
lack
where
of
I was
knowledge. Yeah, that's
yeah.
my lack of knowledge
No, no,
coming
no,
up.
no, just it's and you know what, if you're going to do a bank robbery movie and you're going to have a machine gun battle, if you don't think someone's going to call you out for
Yeah.
being Heat, you should go do something else. But I think we've done our own thing with the story. But it's we are a product of where we come from. I think it's our goal then, with that influence, to try to do your own thing with it, to find your own angle.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can acknowledge that there is a movie that people will think about, and it's nodding towards it is always fine, because then nobody can accuse you of pretending you didn't know it existed. But yeah, it's perfectly fine. I mean, God, there's never going to be a spaceship docking sequence that isn't going to touch on 2001. There's just no, like,
Right.
they wrote the playbook. That's how it goes.
Right.
But you can have fun.
Yes, you can have a lot of fun. I had someone ask me if Ambulance was a influence, and I haven't seen it, and so it's not. But yeah.
Yeah.
So all kinds of I was raised on James Cameron and Spielberg and Carpenter, and if you were to roll through my Rolodex of movies, you'll definitely see influences of the people that I aspired to and looked up to as filmmakers.
Which is totally fine. I mean, that's always fun. That's like the psychoanalysis after the fact.
For sure. I mean, I have a transition and I don't know what the real name for it is, but where the actor starts with his back blacking out the lens and then walking out into frame. And I've referred to that as a Carpenter cut my whole life, just because that's where I saw it.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, you're probably right. Let's go with it. Why not?
All right.
There, we've made terminology. Now we can move forward into the next thing.
It's stamped. Yes.
My thanks to William Kaufman, whose new film, The Channel, is now available on digital and on demand. Thanks also to Alia Stationwala. She knows what she did. William's not on Twitter. I mean, who is anymore? But you can find Collateral on 4K, Blu-ray, and DVD from Paramount Home Entertainment. It's also streaming on Paramount Plus and Hoopla, and available to rent or buy on various VOD services. For now, at least, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 44 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your booster when you can. I'll see you next week.